The Curious Nightlife of Viking Fishermen. Hey guys, tonight we slip into the salted air of a Viking fjord, your boots crunching over frost-laced rocks as you trudge toward an old fishing boat, bobbing like a stubborn cork. The wind tastes like iron and brine, the kind that claws at your cheeks and drips from your nose before you've even said your first prayer to Odin for a safe haul. The stars overhead blink through slow trails of your breath, and the only lantern light comes from your neighbor, who's muttering something about trolls stealing his spare oars last season. You probably won't survive this if you forget your cloak your mother warned you, after all, but you thought you knew better. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from, whether it's a city high-rise or a sleepy village like this one. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your boots knock against the hull, rough planks coated in sea salt and last week's fish guts. You pull your hood tighter as the boat rocks gently under your weight. The fishing line, rough and knotted, feels like your grandfather's beard in your gloved hands. Each twist tells a story of past winters, frozen fingers, and nights when the sea gave nothing back but frostbite. Historians still argue whether these little open fishing boats were truly seaworthy in deep fjords. But you have no choice tonight. You adjust your wool tunic scratchy, but warmer than the slick sealskins some prefer. A single torch burns near the bow, throwing jittery shadows of you and your two shipmates across the frozen water. There's an odd comfort in the smell of old net sour fish, damp hemp, and hints of tar that might be older than your village itself. Somewhere in those fibers might still cling scales from a cod your father caught before you were born. A little talisman, maybe, or just a reason for your sleeves to stink for days. You push away from the shore with an oar carved last summer. The fjord yawns open, a black mirror that will soon swallow your reflection. The village behind you blurs into nothing but pinpricks of fire. Funny how you're always leaving warmth behind hearth, blanket, mother's soup for the chance at tomorrow's breakfast. Even your dog gave you that look tonight. The one that says, "Are you really doing this again?" No matter. You're doing this because if you don't, you'll have no salted fish to trade for honey mead, no scraps for stew, and nothing for that big winter festival that everyone pretends to dread but secretly loves. A chill wave slaps against the hull, spraying your face. You taste salt on your tongue. You hear your brother Lanky loud humming an old saga behind you. He's got a voice like a wounded gull, but it keeps the shadows honest. Some folks swear humming keeps spirits at bay, particularly those watery phantoms who envy the living their warmth and breath. Mainstream fact? The Vikings fished year-round, even when the sea threatened to swallow them whole. Herring, cod, and haddock were more than dinner. They were the currency that filled barrels and stomachs alike. But here is the fringe tidbit for your fireside trivia. Some say fishermen smeared fish oil in their hair before heading out, a superstition to lure bigger hauls. You run a hand through your own hair. Now fishy enough, you reckon, without extra help. As you lean into your oar, the night groans with promise. The water beneath hides secrets some mundane, some monstrous. Maybe you all hook enough herring to impress that neighbor's daughter who pretends not to watch you from her doorway. Maybe you'll just come home wet, cold, and slightly more stubborn. A gull circles above, its wings a pale flash against the dark. It cackles once, like it knows the punchline to your entire life story. You ignore it, squinting toward the far fjord mouth, where rumor says the best cod swim in lazy circles, fat and unaware. Historians still argue whether these Norse folk truly feared the kraken, or if it was just something they invented to scare newcomers. You like to think it as real makes your father. S stories of nearly getting dragged underfeel a bit less like drunken nonsense. You shift your weight, feeling the old wood creak under your boots. If you're lucky, the boat won't spring a leak tonight. If you're really lucky, the haul will be enough to brag about come dawn. And if you're unlucky, well, there's always the chance you become that next ghost story whispered by the fire. So you row, and you breathe, and you think about warm soup, soft fur cloaks, and the long, long hours before the sun even thinks of showing its face again. The fjord cradles you in its icy arms, your heartbeat matching the slow slap of water against the hull. Ahead, the dark deepens ripe with fish, secrets, and the first hints of sleep pressing gently at the back of your mind. You keep rowing, shoulders already protesting, but there's a comfort in the ache-proof you're awake, moving, alive in a place that could swallow you whole if you let it. Overhead, the sky stirs with pale ribbons of green and violet. The northern lights, your private audience, flicker like lazy brushstrokes across a black canvas. You glance up, mesmerized by how they dance, without caring if you're watching or freezing. Your brother stops humming long enough to point. Good luck, he whispers. Some say the aurora is the glint of Valkyrie's armor, sweeping low to collect warriors worthy of Valhalla. You, thankfully, are just a fisherman tonight. No sword, no shield. Just a splintered oar and a pocket of stale bread you're already eyeing. Historians still argue whether the Vikings saw the lights as omens harbingers of good fishing or bad spirits. You decide it's good luck tonight. It must be. Why else would the sky bother to put on a show for your lonely boat? You pause your rowing to catch your breath. The water sighs under you, and somewhere beneath that blackness, cod circle lazily. Or so you hope. The wind tugs at your hood, slipping in cold fingers that creep down your neck. You pull it tighter, cursing softly as you feel an icy drop slide straight down your spine. That'll wake you up faster than any cup of ale. The boat drifts for a moment. You close your eyes, let the creaking hull rock you like a cradle. But sleep is dangerous out. Hear one nod of your head, and the fjord will claim you without fanfare. Your brother slaps your boot lightly. Row. He's right, so you do. 1, 2, 3. The oar dips and lifts, water gurgling like it's laughing at you. The lights above flicker again, brighter now, like they're mocking your struggle. You imagine they whisper to the fish, warning them you're coming with nets and hunger. Mainstream fact, Vikings weren't just savage raiders. They were master sailors and clever fishermen who knew these icy veins better than any map could promise. The fjords were both highways and pantries. Some nights, the fish gave themselves up without a fight. Other nights, light to night, the sea held its secrets close, as if testing your resolve to pry them loose. A shadow darts beneath the hull. You freeze. Just a fish or something bigger? The old men back home swear by tales of sea serpents, giant eels that could capsize a boat for sport. Fringe tidbit? In some sagas, fishermen claimed the northern lights themselves could hypnotize whales, leading them straight to shore for the taking. You chuckle under your breath. If only tonight's catch would just jump in the boat and save you the backache. Your brother starts humming again, this time a different tune. You pick up the rhythm with your strokes, the oar dipping into the cold with each note. Every few pulls, the lights overhead shift curtains of green and purple sweeping, wide enough to make you feel like the last person on earth. Or at least the last fool out here chasing fish in the middle of the night. Another wave splashes over the gunwale, soaking your boots. You wiggle your toes inside their wool wrapping, half hoping they don't freeze solid before dawn. You think about the fire waiting back home. You think about how warm your mother's stew pot must be right now, the lid rattling as root vegetables and scraps of fish bubble inside. You wonder who's telling your dog that you'll be home soon. The fjord is silent, except for your breathing, your brother's hum, and the slap of water that never stops reminding you how tiny you are. Somewhere behind you, the village lights have vanished completely. Ahead, the black stretches on forever, broken only by the crackle of aurora and your torch's feeble glow. Historians still argue whether these small crews ever feared getting lost out here, whether they trusted the stars, the shape of the mountains, or just stubborn instinct to guide them home. You like to believe your bones know the way. That's what you tell yourself, anyway. Your oar dips again, another splash. You pause to flex your fingers. The wind slides under your hood once more, icy as betrayal. And yet there's a kind of peace here, just you, the lights, and the slow rhythm of a boat that doesn't care about your hunger or your aching back. It just wants to float. You glance up one more time. The sky rewards you with the sudden shimmer ribbons folding and unfurling like a god's forgotten banner. It's enough to keep your arms moving. One more pull, one more push through the dark. A laugh escapes you. Quiet, but real. You remember that neighbor's daughter? The one pretending not to care? She said you'd never be brave enough to row out this far alone. Well, here you are, half frozen, half awake, rowing beneath a sky so alive it almost feels like it's breathing with you. A splash echoes near the bow fish or spirit. You can't be sure. Either way, you lean into your oar again, chasing the shape of a catch you can't yet see. The aurora flickers once more, painting the water green as you pull deeper into the night. The boat glides closer to shore, the tide carrying you toward a clutch of flickering lights that bob like distant fireflies. You squint, half expecting to see the outline of another fishing boat, but know these flames belong to a camp tucked into a rocky inlet. The hush of oars fades as you coast in, the gentle scrape of your hull on pebbles echoing like a soft drum roll against the fjord's vast quiet. You step out, boots sinking into a mix of slush and seaweed. Your brother jumps down behind you, landing with a grunt that startles a pair of gulls from a boulder. Their wings slice the air above, squawking curses that only seabirds can get away with. Ahead, men huddle around driftwood fires, bundled in cloaks that smell of fish smoke and salt. One lifts a horn cup your way, a silent invitation you can't resist. You trudge closer, feeling the warmth kiss your frozen fingers before you even stretch them out to the blaze. Mainstream fact? These little shore camps dotted the fjords whenever the fish were plenty. Viking fishermen often spent nights away from their homes, working in shifts to keep their nets full and their bellies less so. Here, the land becomes a temporary village, half work, half mischief, and mostly stories taller than any pine in the forest. You find a flat rock near the fire's edge. It is warm enough to trick your backside into believing you re-sitting by your own hearth. Someone tosses a chunk of driftwood onto the flames, sending up sparks that swirl into the ink-black sky, joining the northern lights in their sleepy dance. The man beside you, red beard, one eyebrow thicker than the other, nudges a skin of mead your way. You accept it gratefully. The mead's sharp sweetness cuts through the salt caked on your tongue. You cough once, then grin when the warmth spreads through your chest. Fringe tidbit? Some fishermen believed that sharing drink by the shore kept sea spirits at bay. Better to have tipsy laughter ward off any ghosts that might slither in with the tide. You don't know if that's true, but it feels right to laugh now, so you do. The sound mingling with the hiss of the fire and the soft slap of waves. Historians still argue whether these gatherings were more about safety or socializing. Was it just smarter to stay close to others? Or did the cold forge a kind of brotherhood that no lone fisherman could break? You glance at the circle of faces, half hidden in flickering orange light, and decide it doesn't matter. Out here, it feels good not to be alone. Your brother plops down next to you, cheeks red from the cold, or the mead may be both. He pulls off his gloves and wiggles his fingers dangerously close to the flames, pretending to ignore the elder across the way who, spinning a tale about a boat swallowed whole by a wave taller than 3 longhouses stacked end to end. You raise an eyebrow. The storyteller catches your look and shrugs. Happened near Trondheim, or maybe Iceland. Depends on who you ask. The circle chuckles, and someone tosses a bone onto the fire-crackling sparks, leap up like startled ghosts. You shift your feet closer to the warmth. The boots squelch slightly, damp but loyal. You listen as the men trade stories, some true, some less so. One swears he saw a whale big enough to blot out the moon. Another claims his wife's stew is worse than seaweed and salt water combined. The laughter bounces off the rocks, spilling into the fjord where it vanishes with the tide. A thin hand taps your shoulder. A boy barely old enough to hold a net offers you a sliver of smoked fish wrapped in dried seaweed. You bite down. It's salty, chewy, and tastes faintly of pine smoke. Good enough for now. Your stomach agrees with a grateful growl. Mainstream fact again. Smoked fish was a lifesaver for these night vigils, easy to carry, quick to eat, and salty enough to keep you drinking more mead. Which, naturally, kept the stories flowing long after the flames burned low. You lean back on your elbows, letting the warmth seep into your bones. You can feel the lull of sleep nipping at your edges, but you blink it away. Too early. The night still holds work, and besides, the gossip is too rich to miss. Your brother elbows you, eyes wide. He nods toward the far side of the camp, where two fishermen have started an argument over who caught the fattest cod last season. Voices rise, a hand wave here, a mocking bow there. The circle erupts in quiet siggers. You smirk. Some things never change, no matter the century or the cold. Historians still argue whether these fishing nights doubled as quiet competitions, men measuring bravery, bragging rights, and fish guts in equal measure. Tonight, you're content to watch from your warm rock, boots steaming near the fire, listening to the crackle and hum of a Viking nightlife that drifts somewhere between mischief and sleep. The aurora flickers overhead once more, softer now, like the sky is yawning too. You take another sip of mead. Let it burn down to your toes. You wonder if the fish are sleeping beneath you right now, dreaming their cold, dark dreams while you roast your chilled bones by the flame. The wind sighs through the inlet, lifting sparks toward the stars. You draw your cloak tighter, lean closer to the warmth, and settle in content for now to listen, to laugh, and to pretend the night is endless and forgiving. The night drags its heavy cloak tighter around the camp as you push off from the fire's warmth. You know you can stay by the driftwood blaze forever. There is fish to catch and coin to earn. And besides, you'd rather not be mocked for dozing off and drooling on your brother's shoulder. The crackle of the fire fades behind you as you trudge back to the boat, boots squishing into seaweed slick as soap underfoot. Your brother shoves off the shore first, the hull scraping over barnacled stones with a sound that makes your teeth itch. You step in after him, nearly slipping on the wet planks. He steadies you with a laugh. Careful. If you fall in, I'm not rowing back for your ghost. Comforting. The torch flickers low at the bow, casting a pale glow that barely cuts the darkness. The fjord opens ahead, wide and cold, swallowing the moonlight. You bend over the side to check your net's coarse hemp, thick knots, patched more times than you care to count. A few dried scales catch the torchlight, tiny silver moons stuck in the mesh. Mainstream fact. Viking fishermen used nets weighted with stones or bits of iron to drag through schools of herring or cod. A catch could feed entire villages or become barter for iron tools, wool, or barrels of sour ale. Not exactly treasure by saga standards, but try surviving winter without salted fish. You run your fingers over the knots, feeling for tears. The fjord stories drift back to you old men, warning of nets torn by something deeper than cod. A kraken's playful tug, perhaps, or a seal angry you've stolen its supper. Fringe tidbit? Some tailies speak of fish so huge they drag a net and the boat straight to the ocean floor, all while laughing bubbles into the cold dark. You flick a glance at the water. Just a superstition, you tell yourself. but you double-check the knots anyway. Your brother hands you the bait bag bits of salted herring and fish guts that reek so strongly you wonder if they chase away spirits and your sense of smell. You smear a chunk along the net's edge, trying not to gag as the slick mess coats your fingers. He snorts behind you. "Better than my wife's cooking," he says. He's not married, but the joke lands anyway. You flick a bit of guts at him. He dodges, nearly tipping the boat. Balance regained, you both grin into the dark like fools. You lower the net slowly, careful not to tangle the lines. The weights slip under with soft plunks, swallowed by the fjord without a splash. You feel a shiver run up your spine, whether from the cold or the deep, you're not sure. Above, the aurora curls in lazy ribbons, green smudges drifting like seaweed across the sky. Historians still argue whether Norsemen truly believed in Kraken or just used the legend to scare wide-eyed boys into checking nets properly. You know one thing, it works. You keep peering over the side, half expecting to see a glistening tentacle snake around your foot. Nothing comes, just the gentle slap of water against wood. Your brother hums again, low and tuneless. You join in, tapping the boat's edge with your knuckles. A ritual, maybe noise, to keep the dark from listening too closely. Somewhere beneath you, fish drift in lazy circles, oblivious or indifferent to your presence. Maybe they dream of warmer seas. Maybe they dream of not becoming someone's breakfast. The net line shudders in your hands, a soft tug that snaps you from your daydream. You glance at your brother. He nods, leaning over the side to help pull. The rope scrapes your palms raw as you haul. Muscles tight, breath frosting the air in short puffs. The weight comes slowly heavier than you expected. Mainstream fact again. Herring come in schools so thick they look like dark clouds beneath the boat. Some nights, they nearly leap into your lap. Other nights, you drag up more seaweed than fish. Tonight, you hope for the former, not the latter. A shape breaks the surface, a glistening netful of silver bodies twisting under the torchlight. You grin, relief fizzing in your chest. Enough for the morning meal at least, maybe enough to trade for a mug of mead and a wink from the neighbor's daughter. But as you lean closer, you notice something odd atear in the net's corner. The fish flap wildly, tails slapping cold water into your face. You swear under your breath. More mending tomorrow, more cold fingers working hemp twine by candlelight while your brother snores. Fringe tidbit? Some claim sea monsters hate woven nets, biting through them in quiet revenge for centuries of stolen suppers. You tug the fish free anyway, ignoring the chill that creeps under your tunic. If a kraken wants its dinner back, it can fight you for it. The catch safely stowed in a wooden crate. You run a hand through your hair slick, with sweat and sea spray now. The torch flickers low. You feed it another scrap of oily cloth, watching the flames snap back to life. The light bounces off your brother's grin, off the glistening scales, off the black water waiting to swallow every secret you drop into it. Historians still argue whether these nights were lonely or comforting hours spent at the mercy of wind and wave, wrapped in stories and fear and hope. You lean over the side, watching the fjord ripple in the torchlight, wondering which it is for you. Maybe it's both. You grip the net line again, ready to toss it back for one more haul. The aurora flutters above, half blessing, half mockery. Somewhere beneath the black, another school drifts past unaware, unconcerned, waiting for your hands, your hooks, your hunger. You draw a breath. The rope slides through your fingers once more. One more cast, one more prayer to keep the deep satisfied for now. You slump back against the boat's side for a moment, letting the line rest in the water while you flex your stiff fingers. The cold bites harder now, settling into your knuckles like tiny splinters of ice. Your brother stands, rubbing his neck, staring out across the inky water like he's expecting the next fish to announce itself with a polite cough. You both know the nets won't fill themselves, but there's another prize worth chasing tonight. He nods his chin toward the distant rock-slow shapes that jut from the fjord like sleeping giants. You know what he means before he says it. Seal? He asks, voice low. You sigh, of course. Midnight is as good a time as any to chase a slippery seal across the rocks. You haul the net in carefully, coiling the line around your arm, making a mental note to patch that tear tomorrow, if you're still in one piece. Mainstream fact. Seals were a welcome bonus for Norse fishermen' fur for warmth, fat for lamps, meat for soup when fish grew scarce. Some men claimed the seals were sacred, messengers from the deep or shapeshifters who shed their skin to dance on lonely beaches. The elders back home love that story, mostly because it keeps kids from pestering them for seal steaks every time one pops up near shore. Your brother dips his oar. You guide the boat gently toward the outcrop. Your torch sputtering as salt spray threatens to snuff it out. The closer you get, the more you can see. Jagged boulders slick with moss, black water swirling around their feet, and there just visible something gray and glistening, lounging like it owns the world. Historians still argue whether seals were hunted more for meat or oil. You know the truth is both survival, doesn't care much for the poetry of myths. Still, as you approach, you can't help but wonder, does this sleek shape blinking back at you wear a human soul beneath its fur? You shake your head. Too much mead, or too little sleep, maybe both. Your brother steadies the boat with his oar, while you grab the short spear wedged by your feet. It's not much, just a carved shaft with an iron tip, older than your boots and twice as stubborn. You test its weight in your palm, heartbeat drumming in your ears louder than the gentle splash of waves. The seal lifts its head, dark eyes reflecting your torchlight. It doesn't look afraid, more annoyed, really. Like you're interrupting a private midnight nap. You mouth an apology, half sincere, then inch closer. The boat scrapes the rock, an insult the seal does not appreciate. With a grunt, the creature shifts its bulk, flopping toward the water. You hiss to your brother. Block him. He paddles the bow sideways, cutting off the narrow channel the seal favors. The dance begins. You, hunched and tiptoeing over the boat's slick edge, spear raised. The seal, twisting like an oiled rope, nose twitching at your every step. Fringe tidbit? Some fishermen swore seals could vanish into thin air if you cursed too loudly. So you keep your mouth shut, teeth grinding as your boots slip on the wet wood. A splash to your left, just a wave. Or is it? You steady your breath, then lunge one clean arc of your arm. The spear hits the rock with a dull thunk, missing by a heartbeat. The seal slides into the water with a hiss of spray, its tail flicking as if mocking you for your clumsy aim. You curse under your breath, too quiet to break any magic, just loud enough for your brother to laugh. Next time, he says, snorting as he digs the oar in to steady the drift. You drag the spear back in, its tip scraping your knee. Cold water drips from your sleeves. You almost wish the seal was a shapeshifter at least then. You have a good excuse for missing. Mainstream fact again. Seals were slippery prizes. Many a Viking found himself sprawled on cold stones, arms flailing, dignity floating away with the tide. You pat your chest still dry, mostly. Small victories. You glance back at the rocks, searching for any sign of the seal's return. Nothing. Just the slow swirl of moonlight on black water, the hiss of tiny waves whispering secrets you're too tired to decode. Historians still argue whether these hunts were worth the risk. Broken limbs, frostbitten toes, a slip on mossy rock that sends you to your ancestors faster than any kraken ever could. You feel that debate in your thighs now, muscles trembling from the lunge, the cold crawling higher with every breeze that cuts across the fjord. Your brother claps your shoulder. Soup tonight, fish tomorrow, he says, grinning like a man who didn't just nearly topple into freezing oblivion. You smirk, half-hearted, but real. He's right. There's fish in the crate, smoke at the camp, and another chance tomorrow to chase something bigger or at least slipperier. You settle back onto the bench, spear at your feet, boots dripping onto the planks. The torch flickers again, sputtering out a tiny shower of sparks that land in your brother's hair. He curses, swats them away, then starts humming tuneless, half asleep already. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the boat drift lazily away from the rocks. The seal's gone. Or maybe it watches from the deep, shaking its slick head at the fool with the spear. If it does, you hope it laughs quietly and leaves you in peace until dawn. Your stomach growls loud enough to shame the fjord's hush. The seal may have escaped, but the fish you hauled earlier wait obediently in their crate, and you know better than to fish on an empty belly. Your brother catches the rumble and flashes a grin. About time for that prize catch, eh? He reaches under the bench for the cloth-wrapped bundle-dried fish, a scrap of sour rye, and a nub of hard cheese that could double as a weapon if thrown with enough malice. He tears the fish in half, handing you the bigger piece. Fair's fair. He knows you did most of the rowing. Mainstream fact. Vikings loved dried fish. Cod and herring were gutted, salted, and hung in the bracing wind until they turned leathery enough to survive months at sea. Perfect for a midnight snack under the northern lights. Less perfect when your teeth protest every bite like you're chewing driftwood. You gnaw carefully, tearing at the edges with the caution of a man who values his molars. The salt coats your tongue, sharp enough to make you squint, but it's better than the hollow ache in your gut. A mouthful of fjord air does nothing to wash it down, so you tip back the tiny skin of mead left over from the shore. Warmth flickers in your chest, fighting back the chill that seeps in whenever the wind picks up. Fringe tidbit? Some old fishermen used to slip dried fish into their boots for warmth softening the leather and giving their toes a salty surprise by dawn. You glance at your boots now, half wondering if a hidden snack would be worth the smell come morning. Probably not. Your dog might eat your feet while you sleep. Your brother licks his fingers, then wipes them on the side of the boat. Hear the ghost ship story yet? He asks, his grin all mischief. You grunt. Of course you've heard it. But you nod anyway. These tales taste better under starlight, even when half your mind scoffs at them. He leans closer, lowering his voice like the fjord itself might be eavesdropping. They say if you're too greedy with the nets, pull too many fish. Leave nothing for the deep, and empty ship drifts up the fjord. No crew, no sails, just a single lantern swinging in the wind. If it passes you, the fish leave your nets forever. Not even a herring bone for your trouble. Historians still argue whether these ghost ship legends came from real sightings, stray merchant hulks, abandoned after storms, drifting until they found some unlucky fishermen. Or maybe it's just another scare story, meant to keep men honest with the sea's generosity. Either way, you glance behind you, half expecting to see a lonely lantern bobbing in the dark. Nothing. Just the endless hush of water lapping at your hull. You snap another piece of fish between your teeth. It cracks like brittle leather, but the salt's briny burn is almost pleasant now. The sky above shivers green again, the aurora curling and unraveling like some giant serpent caught in a lazy dream. Your brother hums that off-key tune again, tapping his boot against the planks. The rhythm settles you more than the food does. You can feel your shoulders dropping, the tension slipping away one bite at a time. A seal escaped, the nets tore, but the fish are real and warm in your belly. Small victories matter more than perfect ones out here. Another wave bumps the hull. You brace a hand on the crate to steady it, half listening to your brother as he shifts from ghost ships to gossip stories of fishermen caught sneaking off to rival camps, swapping more than fish when their wives weren't looking. You snort a laugh. Some things never change, even when the sea freezes and the gods themselves look away. Fringe tidbit for your trouble. Some say these midnight gatherings were how deals were struck for more than just cod. Secret trades, quiet alliances, maybe even hushed promises that shaped a village's fortunes for years. Small boats, big secrets. You lean back, letting the last morsel of fish dissolve on your tongue. Historians still argue whether the gossip mattered more than the fish. Did a good rumor travel faster than a fresh herring? Tonight, it feels like both have equal weight. Your brother's voice drifts in and out as the torch flickers lower, its flame chewing on the last scrap of oily cloth. You rest your chin on your knees, arms wrapped around them, eyes half-lidded. The boat rocks you like a cradle, and for a heartbeat, you imagine you could sleep here forever, salt in your hair, fish in your belly, your brother's nonsense spilling over the side into the dark. Another bite, another rumor someone's son ran off with the trader's daughter. Someone's wife swears she saw a spirit in the surf. Someone's cousin found gold under a rock and promptly lost it to a dice game on the next shore. The fjord doesn't care. It holds your secrets, your stories, your fish guts. It listens without judgment, swallows your laughter with the tide, and hums back with the waves. You lick the salt from your fingers, push the empty cloth bundle aside, and let your eyes drift shut just for a moment. Your brother's voice rumbles on. One more ghost story waiting for you when you wake. You jerk awake to the sound of something knocking the hull sharp, rhythmic thuds that echo across the fjord like a stubborn woodpecker at your door. You blink, mouth dry, your brother's humming now replaced by a hush, so complete you can hear the drip of water off the oar blade. He's leaning over the side, peering into the black. He catches your bleary look and shrugs. Probably driftwood, he says, but his voice has that wary edge that says probably means please let it be driftwood. You shift to the other side, careful not to tip the boat. The torch has burned down to an ember of red glow, barely enough to show your breath misting out into the night. You squint at the water inky, rippling gently under the faint light of the northern sky. Something bumps the hull again, softer this time. Mainstream fact, the fjords are littered with driftwood pine and birch carried by rivers, stripped clean of bark, bleached by salt and time until they bob silently along, bumping boats, tickling oars, sometimes tangling in nets when you least need the trouble. You grab the short spear again, more for comfort than use. Your brother smirks. Gonna stab a log? He asks. You ignore him, tapping the butt of the spear against the side. The thumping stops for a moment. Silence. Then a soft scrape, like wet rope dragging along the planks. Fringe tidbit? Some old sea stories claim the spirits of drowned fishermen cling to driftwood restless souls that knock at passing boats, begging for a lantern, a scrap of warmth, a voice to remind them what it was like to breathe. You swallow, trying not to picture pale hands clinging to the hull just below your boots. You lean out a bit farther, peering over the side until the chill mist kisses your cheeks. Your eyes adjust. There, floating just out of reach, a gnarled branch bobs in the slow current, rocking gently with the tide's pulse. Driftwood. Just driftwood. You almost laugh at your own heartbeat. Your brother sighs, rubbing his hands together. Good. Didn't fancy rowing home with a ghost tonight. He flicks the oar back into the water, and the boat pivots lazily, nudging the branch aside. It drifts off, free to knock on someone else's hull down the fjord. Historians still argue whether these tales of haunted driftwood were warnings or just winter as boredom made flesh. When the nights are this long, a simple branch brushing your boat feels like an entire army of restless spirits lining up for your soul. You settle back down, laying the spear across your knees, your brother's grin slowly returning. He dips the oar again, steering you back toward deeper water. The torch sputters once, almost dying, then flares up just enough to remind you how cold you'd be without its shy warmth. The nets are coiled beside you, waiting for your hands, your hope, your willingness to gamble one more catch before the dawn drags you back to shore. You rub your eyes with the heel of your palm, salt crust flaking from your lashes. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cries, the sound shredded by the wind. You glance up at the aurora, its colors softer now, more like lazy brushstrokes than a warrior's banner. The green curls into wisps of ghostly silk, drifting across the endless dark. You wonder how many fishermen have sat here just like you, staring at that same cold sky, half wishing they were by a hearth instead of perched on a plank above the deep. Your brother whistles through his teeth, a tuneless thing that makes the water feel less empty. He nudges you with his boot. "Next net's yours," he says, like it's a prize and not more work. You roll your eyes, but reach for the line anyway. Mainstream fact again. Viking nets weren't just random tangles. Some were so expertly knotted, they were passed down like heirlooms mended and cursed over by generations. You wonder if the knots beneath your fingers remember the men who tied them first, back when your grandfather's grandfather wasn't much older than you are now. The rope runs rough and damp through your palms. You check each loop, each knot, feeling for weakness in the dark. Another tear would be a curse tomorrow, but tonight, it's just one more thing your fingers know how to fix. Fringe tidbit more rumor than truth, maybe. Some believed you should never whistle on a boat at night. The sound, they said, could call up a sudden wind or worse, draw the attention of something old and listening down in the deep. You swat your brother's leg. "Stop that." He smirks, keeps whistling anyway. The fjord sighs beneath you, waves brushing the hull in soft applause. You drop the net back into the water, watching it disappear into a world darker than any saga can describe. The rope shivers once, like it's greeting something hungry below. Historians still argue whether these fishermen loved the sea or feared it, whether the deep was a fickle friend or an endless threat. You think maybe it's both. You think maybe that's why you come back, night after cold night, to feel its heartbeat echo through your own. Your brother's humming starts up again, no tune at all, just noise to keep the shadows honest. You lean your head back against the gunwale, staring at the sky. The driftwood's gone. The ghost ship's somewhere else tonight. For now, it's just you, the net, and the endless hush of a fjord that promises nothing but keeps you company anyway. Your hands ache from hauling rope, but the net comes up heavier this time, a promise of coins clinking in your pocket come morning if your fingers don't freeze off first. The line strains across your palm, wet hemp biting into cracked skin. Your brother braces the other end, shoulders hunched, boots braced against the hull's slippery planks. You grunt, he grunts back, both of you pretending you don't hear your bones creaking like old floorboards. Slowly, the net rises, dripping black water that beads like oil under the stuttering torchlight. Mainstream fact. Cod was king here thick, firm fish that smoked well, salted better, and traded further than any Norse gossip. Some catches found their way south, swapping cold fjord nights for warm market stalls in towns you've only ever heard about from passing traders. Fish for silver, fish for iron, fish for rumors about kingdoms that would laugh at your tiny campfire stories. The mesh breaches the waterline alive with wriggling shapes, scales catching stray sparks from your dying torch. You bite down a tired laugh. A good haul. Maybe not enough to buy a new boat, but enough to keep your mother from shaking her head at you for chasing drifting ghost logs instead of honest work. Your brother's voice cracks the hush. Hear that? He whispers. You pause mid-haul, rope locked in your raw hands, ears straining for something beyond your own heartbeat. At first, nothing, just the slap of fishtails and the faint fizz of the aurora overhead. Then you hear it too, the soft flap of wings, almost drowned by the fjord's gentle slap. You both look up. Overhead, a shadow circles once, twice broad wings tipped with white that glow faintly green where the aurora kisses their edges. An owl. Out here, this far from the trees? You watch it glide soundlessly over your heads, then drift off into the night. Fringe tidbit. Some old tailies claimed owls carried the souls of drowned sailors on their wingtips, ferrying them back to land so they wouldn't haunt the deep forever. You shiver, partly at the thought, partly at the wind sneaking icy fingers down your collar again. The bird's gone as quickly as it came, a flick of feathers lost to the black. Historians still argue whether Norse fishermen truly clung to such omens, or just used them as excuses for why the nets sometimes came up empty. Maybe both. Easier to blame a ghostly bird than admit the fish slipped past your frayed mesh. Your brother snaps you back with a tug on the rope. They're not going to gut themselves, he grumbles. He's right. Together you wrestle the net into the boat, the catch thrashing like a sack of tiny storms. Scales scatter underfoot, glinting like spilled silver. You press a boot down to keep a fat cod from leaping right back to freedom. No sense feeding the fjord twice in one night. The boat dips lower now, under the extra weight. You feel it settle into the water's cradle, rocking more sluggishly with each wave. Your arms burn. Your breath fogs in short, sharp bursts as you untangle the wriggling mess, flicking smaller fish into a separate crate for the boys back at camp to sort. Your brother hums again off-key, as always but comforting, a thread of normalcy woven through the cold and the dark. You grunt at him. You keep that up, he'll summon something worse than driftwood. He just grins, voice growing louder to prove a point. Mainstream fact again. Viking fishermen didn't waste much. Heads, guts, fins, everything had a purpose. Fish heads boiled down into broth. Guts turned into bait for the next unlucky school swimming under your hull. You reach into the slippery pile, fingers numb as you flick a blade along a cod's belly, guts sliding out in a slick line that hits the water with a soft plop. Fringe tidbit. Some claimed feeding the fjord's belly was a fair trade fish guts for safe passage, bones for calm tides. You're not sure if you buy it, but you watch the swirl disappear beneath the surface, half hoping the sea's hunger is satisfied for now. You wipe your blade on your sleeve, ignoring the smear of scales left behind. Another fish, another flick of the wrist. The cold bites harder with each cut tiny needles driving up your fingertips. Your breath rattles like dry reeds. Historians still argue whether these night hauls were madness or necessity. You decide it's both. Nobody drifts under an aurora for fun when they could be warm in bed. But hunger makes its own rules, and the fjord does not take iOS. Your brother tosses you a scrap of cloth. You wrap your raw knuckles quickly, hoping to hold what little warmth you have left. A cod flops at your boot one last kick at freedom. You nudge it back into the crate with your heel, mumbling an apology it won't hear. The owl's gone, the driftwood's gone, the ghost ship hasn't shown yet. Just the hum of your brother's tuneless song and the soft slap of water under the boat. You pause for a moment, palm resting on the crate's damp rim. The aurora flickers above, its ribbons fraying at the edges, paling as dawn edges closer, though it's hours away yet. You pull the last fish free, blade steady, breath rising like smoke, as you work by the dying glow of the torch. The last fish slides into the crate with a soft thud that echoes louder than it should across the hush of the fjord. You lean back, stretching your fingers, feeling each knuckle pop like old rope under strain. Your brother wipes his blade on his sleeve, shrugs off the cold like it's just a rumor, and huffs a breath that swirls into the lantern's dying glow. You share a look, one of those wordless exchanges brothers perfect from birth. It says, "Good catch, tired bones. Let's not tip the boat over now." You both nod once, satisfied. Mainstream fact. After the gutting, the work never really stops. Fish guts slip into bait bags. Scales stick to your boots, your sleeves, even your eyebrows if you're unlucky. Tomorrow, the fish will be smoked over driftwood fires or salted down into barrels heavy enough to pop a mule's knees on the trail back to the village. Trade, stew, maybe a gift for the chieftain's table if he's feeling magnanimous. The circle goes on. Your brother pulls the net back in, folding it carefully in loops that slap cold water onto the planks. You help him, hands numb, knuckles white. The rough hemp scratches old cuts raw, but you ignore it. The smell of fish oil and brine is so deep in your skin, now you'll carry it all the way to spring. A soft breeze ghosts across the fjord, just enough to rustle your hair under your cap. You breathe in deep, and it tastes of salt and cold, and a promise that you all sleep like the dead once you finally hit dry land. Fringe tidbit. Some fishermen slept right in their boats, anchored near the shore so they could drift off to the rhythm of the tide. They'd cover themselves with old nets, curl up around the fish crates for warmth, and dream of feasts they'd never taste. You glance at the empty corner of your boat and imagine it your brother snoring, your back against the planks, the fjord gently rocking you into someone else's dream. Historians still argue whether these floating naps were born of necessity or just stubbornness. Was it worth risking drifting out to sea for an extra hour as sleep? You'd guess yes. After tonight, a nap on the waves sounds like a gift, even if it means waking up half frozen with a cod for a pillow. Your brother's humming returns, softer this time. A half-finished tune you've heard 1,000 times, but never learned the words for, if there even were words to begin with. He raps his knuckles against the crate like it's a drum. You join him with a low whistle, ignoring the superstition that says you'll summon a storm. Let it come. The nets are full tonight. He finishes looping the net, tossing it down by your boots with a heavy thump. The boat tilts gently, then settles. The water laps at the hull, steady as a heartbeat. The torch flickers again, sputtering into its last breath of flame. You fish out the last scrap of oil-soaked cloth from your pouch and feed it to the torch. It flares up one final time, a small rebellion against the dark. Its light dances over your brother's grin, his slick scales under your boots, the faint cloud of your breath. It throws shadows on your hands raw, callous things that know more about survival than any saga hero ever did. Mainstream fact again. No matter how full the nets, there's always more work waiting when you reach shore. Splitting, salting, mending, mending, mending. Always mending. A torn net tonight means a lost catch tomorrow. You rub your thumb along the fresh fray you noticed earlier, making a mental note to patch it at dawn. If your fingers don't freeze off first. A faint splash to your right pulls your eyes to the fjord. Just a fish, maybe, or something bigger tasting the air. You lean over the side, peering into the ink. The torch's glow barely kisses the water before it fades into blackness. Whatever's down there isn't interested in you tonight. Thank the old gods for small mercies. Fringe tidbit again. Some say the fjord remembers. The fish remember. If you take too much, if you brag too loud, the sea keeps a ledger in the dark. Someday, when you least expect it, the tide will collect. You smile at the thought, dark, cold, but honest, like the fjord itself. Historians still argue whether Viking fishermen were reckless gamblers or careful stewards. You reckon it's both. You work, you take, you give back sometimes with fish heads. And bones, sometimes with your own bones, if the waves decide they've had enough of you. Your brother shifts beside you, voice low and half lulled by the soft slap of water. Think she'll hold? He asks, nudging the hull with his boot. He means the boat patches on patches, planks that creak like old knees. You tap the gunwale twice, a small superstition that says yes, even if you don't believe it. She'll hold, you mumble back. The aurora dances overhead again, ribbons of green and purple draped across the sky like a careless blessing. You let your head fall back to watch it, breath fogging out in lazy clouds. Somewhere in that swirling light, you swear you see shapes, a prow, a sail, maybe that ghost ship everyone fears. But it's just a trick of the cold and the dark, and a mind stretched too thin by salt and stories. You look down at your brother. He stopped humming, chin tucked into his collar, eyes drifting shut. The boat rocks, the fish settle, and the fjord hums back in a hush that makes your eyelids heavy too. One last check of the nets. One last glance at the water surface, calm as a sleeping giant's chest. No driftwood knocking this time. No seal taunting you from the rocks. Just the fjord, your catch, and the soft promise that tomorrow you'll do it all again. The boat drifts so gently, now you almost forget you're floating at all. Just you, your brother snoring under his cap, and the fjord whispering secrets no ear can keep for long. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, nose buried in rough wool that smells of smoke and salt and all the nights you've spent chasing fish instead of sleep. The torch guttered out a while ago, but you don't mind. The aurora overhead glows bright enough to see your breath, bright enough to silver the crates stacked at your feet. The fish rest quiet now, tails limp, eyes glazed like cold coins waiting to be spent. You wonder who will gut them come sunrise, if your fingers stay stiff and your eyelids refuse to open again. Probably you somebody always has to. Mainstream fact. On some nights when the weather turned cruel and the wind howled down the fjords like a pack of wolves, fishermen tied their boats together for safety-forming floating clusters to share warmth, food, and the comfort of knowing you weren't the only fool daring the dark. They'd drift in ragged circles, swapping gossip and scraps of dried fish while their nets tugged at the deep. You wish for a moment you had another boat beside you. Now someone else's torch flickering across the black. Another voice humming a song you pretend not to listen to. But it's just you and your brother's soft wheeze. The boat rocking to a lullaby, older than any saga stone. You check the crates again, habit, more than need. The fish glisten dull silver in the starlight, their scales catching the aurora's shimmer like tiny shields. Enough to trade, enough to eat, maybe enough to buy your brother silence next time you miss a seal by an arm's length. He still hasn't let that one go. Fringe tidbit. Some fishermen swore the aurora was the reflection of shoals of herring under the sea massive, shimmering clouds of silver bodies that mirrored their dance into the night sky. A silly story, you suppose, but you look anyway, half hoping you'll spot a ripple of tails flashing green beneath your drifting hull. Nothing but shadows. Historians still argue whether these old fishtailies were for scaring children or for comforting grown men when the night grew too long. You think it's both. Fear and comfort wear the same face when the water's deep and your lantern has out. A breeze ghosts across your cheek, sharper now, hinting that the fjord might rouse itself soon, slap your hull with waves that bite instead of rock. You shift on your bench, boots creaking on damp planks, slick with scales and brine. The crate nearest your foot shifts slightly, and you steady it with a lazy nudge. You imagine it sliding overboard, your whole night's work drifting off to feed the same seal you couldn't spear. The thought almost makes you laugh, but you bite it back. Best not to tempt the fjord with jokes about losing your catch. You glance at your brother chin on his chest, mouth open just wide enough to catch a stray snowflake if the sky decides to spit one down. He'll wake when the cold cuts too deep, or his dreams twist into something sharp. He always does. You wonder what he dreams about. Not fish, you hope. Maybe a hearth fire, a warm bowl of broth, a wife who snores softer than he does. Mainstream fact again. Cod liver oil liquid gold to some was a byproduct of all this midnight gutting. Fishermen boiled down livers by the barrel to sell or trade, the oil prized for lamps and healing potions that made the village healers purse their lips and nod wisely. A stinking, greasy business that paid just enough to keep your net mended and your belly full. You run a thumb along your belt where your own tiny flask hangs, just enough oil to barter for a fresh torch or a strip of cloth come morning. The boat lists slightly as a wave lifts its side, then sets it back down with a sigh. You rub your eyes with the heel of your hand, scraping away the itch of salt and sleeplessness. You wish you had the guts to doze like your brother had tipped back, mouth open, dreams dancing across his eyelids. But someone always has to keep an eye on the dark. Fringe tidbit again. Some old wives said if you fell asleep adrift under the aurora, you'd wake up changed half fish, half man, cursed to swim beneath the ice forever, netting herring for the sea god's table. You glance at your fingers, rough and raw, and smelling of salt and scales. Maybe you're halfway there already. Historians still argue whether these sleepy curses were real fears, or just the mind's way of staying awake, when sleep might mean drifting off course, past the headlands, out into the black mouth of the open sea. You tighten your grip on the oar, resting across your knees, reassuring yourself you're still anchored to the here and now. Your brother snorts awake for a heartbeat, blinking blearily at you. My turn? He mumbles, voice thick as the fog that sometimes creeps across these waters in early spring. You shake your head. Sleep. I've got it. He grunts, shifts, and is gone again, already somewhere warmer in his mind than the chill that seeps into your boots. The aurora ripples above slow waves of green silk, caught on a breeze you can't feel. You watch it dance, watch your breath fog, watch the fjord hold you like a mother who never promises you, I'll see shore again, but hums you to sleep anyway. The boat creaks again as you shift your weight, boots scraping against planks glossed with fish slime and half-frozen spray. Somewhere far off, a faint crack like splitting ice rolls across the fjord, reminding you the sea here has teeth if you get lazy. You test the oar with your palm-cold wood, smooth in spots, splintered in others where years of rowing have worn it honest. Your brother mutters in his sleep, turning his head just enough to wedge his nose deeper into his collar. You grin he'll wake with a neck so stiff he'll swear an angry spirit twisted it in the night. Maybe you'll outtell him it, as true just to watch him rub salt into his shoulders all day. Mainstream fact. These quiet hours before dawn were when most Viking fishermen checked their lines and nets, mending by feel if they had to, fingers nimble despite the cold. Some even carried little bone needles in their belts' prized tools, passed down from father to son, their smooth whalebone slick with oil and years of whispered curses, when threads tangled at the worst moment. You fish yours from a pouch tucked under your cloak, an old thing, carved with a runic knot you never bothered to translate. You hold it to the faint glow of the sky, tilting it between your fingers. Still good, still sharp. You work the net's fresh tear, thumb and forefinger pinching the rough mesh as the wind flicks your hair against your cheeks. Fringe tidbit. There is an old saying that a man who mends his net under the northern lights stitches secrets into the sea words only the deep can hear. You half smile at the idea, lips chapped from salt and night air. Maybe your net's knots whisper all the things you want to say aloud, your fears, your half-formed prayers, your wish that your brother snores just a touch quieter next time. Historians still argue whether these bits of net lore meant anything or were just excuses for why someone might be muttering to themselves at 2 a.m. Either way, you've caught yourself humming as you loop the twine, fingers moving in a rhythm older than your name. The tear I sin much a clean slice near the bottom float line where a rock or a desperate fin nipped it through. You feed the twine through the hole, knot it twice, pull tight until your fingertips burn. The wind shifts, carrying the soft slap of water against the hull, and something else. A low hoot drifting from shore to your left. An owl again? Or just the wind mimicking life, like it loves to do. You glance at your brother still sleeping, one hand limp on the side of the crate, like he's guarding the fish in his dreams. You shake your head, biting back another grin. Good luck to any spirit trying to slip a single cod from under his nose. Mainstream fact again. In some coastal settlements, every man's mending style was like a signature. You could look at the knotwork and say, that's Bjorn's hand, or that one's Olav's mess. When a net drifted ashore tangled and empty, It told a story all its own. Where it came from, who lost it, whether its owner survived to mend it again. You test your patch, tugging the twine tight enough to draw a fresh sting across your thumb. Good enough. You toss the needle back into its pouch and tuck it deep inside your cloak. The wind plucks at the loose ends of your hair, lifting them toward the aurora like it wants to braid you to the sky. Fringe tidbit again. Some claim the wind here carries voices if you listen long enough, warnings, or gossip, or the hush of things that know better than to be loud. You lean your head back, eyes half-lidded, listening for words in the rustle of water brushing the hull. Nothing tonight but the echo of your own heartbeat, steady and stubborn. Historians still argue whether men trusted these signs more than their own eyes. A flicker in the sky, a whistle of wind. Did they read the fjord like scripture or shrug it off as the sea's idle chatter? You figure it depends on the night. Tonight, the fjord says patch your net, keep your catch, drift easy till dawn. You'll take it. Your brother shifts again, a sigh rattling out of him like an old bellows. He mutters something about a seal of course, and you nudge his boot with yours, just to hush him before he wakes the fish. He grunts, settles, the boat tilts, then rocks back into its slow cradle. You flex your hands, the raw spots throbbing under the twine burns. A good ache, honest work. Tomorrow, your mother will scold you for dripping fish scales on her floor. You'll promise to sweep it twice, and then forget. Same dance, same hush, same smell of salt that never leaves your skin, no matter how long you stand by the hearth. Above you, the aurora curls and twists like someone's trailing ribbon through ink. A splash far off, maybe a real fish, maybe your imagination playing tricks in the cold. Doesn't matter. The net is mended, the crates are full, and the fjord's lullaby is softer now. You tuck your hands into your sleeves, chin sinking into your collar like your brother's. The boat sighs under you wood, rope, salt, all of it pressed together in this floating cradle of tired dreams and slippery prizes. You close your eyes for a breath, letting the hush rock you closer to something that might be sleep. The hush settles deeper now, the fjord folding itself around your little craft like a mother pulling a blanket up to your chin. Somewhere in that quiet, your mind drifts too, half dreaming while your eyes stay stubbornly cracked open, just in case the sea decides to test your trust. Your brother shifts in his sleep, muttering a word you can't quite catch, maybe a name, maybe just a grunt. His head rolls to the other side, nose buried in the collar that smells like fish oil and wood smoke. A snore bubbles up, faint and steady, sensing with the soft lap of water against the hull. You almost envy him, drifting off without a care while you hold vigil under the stars. Mainstream fact: Viking fishermen were famous for their endurance. Some rode for days on end when the shoals moved unexpectedly, sleeping in snatches, arms thick with rope burns and salt rash, eyes red from salt spray and raw wind. They called it stubbornness. You call it survival wrapped in wool, fingers numb, eyes fixed on a sky that never promises anything. A ripple catches your ear, just a faint shush near the bow. You tilt your head, listening through the lull. It's nothing, probably a fish brushing the hull, or the tide shifting a bit of seaweed against the wood. Still, you lean forward, peering into the dark. The aurora above flickers like an old lamp, green ribbons unraveling into violet threads that spill across the stars. Fringe tidbit: some old folk believed these lights were reflections of the Valkyries riding their sky horses, searching for brave souls to lift into the afterlife. You squint at the streaks above, half hoping you don't see a horse galloping through all that color too soon for you to ride anywhere but home. Historians still argue whether the old fishermen truly believed the lights were messengers of war, or simply the northern sky showing off its odd tricks. You'd rather believe they were harmless, a bit of beauty to keep your mind off the cold crawling up your spine. A tiny wave bumps the hull, just enough to rattle the crates stacked at your feet. You place a hand on the nearest one, steadying it, feeling the slick sides of your catch shift inside. They're cold now, stiffening under the bite of the night. Tomorrow, they'll be brined or smoked, packed in barrels heavy enough to break a mule's back. A king's feast for some far-off market town, bought with your stiff hands and your brother's snoring head. You look over at him again, mouth open, breath fogging in slow, ragged puffs. He always swore he'd rather farm than fish, but there he is, dreaming under the same northern sky, smelling like cod and seawater just like you. You shake your head, a dry laugh in your throat. Some choices make themselves no matter what promises you spit over the hearth. Mainstream fact again. When the catch was good, whole families joined in the work, dawn wives, sisters, even kids with nimble fingers sorting, gutting, laying fish on racks to dry. The smell carried for miles, sweet and sharp, a promise of meals and trade and stories swapped over warm stew. Fringe tidbit. One stubborn tale claims if a fish flops back to life while it's on the drying rack, it's a sign that someone in the village is lying about the catch, skimming coins, sneaking extra barrels away before the chief's tallyman can count. You grin at that. If tonight's haul starts twitching come morning, you'll blame your brother just to watch him swear he is innocent through a mouthful of stolen herring. A low whistle slips through your teeth, half a tune, half a ward against the creeping hush that wants to drag you under with sleep. You glance at the sky, still there, still shimmering like silk torn and mended over and over by invisible hands. The wind sighs over the gunwale, lifting your hair, pressing salt deeper into your skin. Historians still argue whether these lonely drifts made fishermen poets or just fools who muttered at the stars to keep their heads clear. You suspect you're both. You whisper to the fjord under your breath nonsense words, a half prayer that the knots hold. The boat stays afloat. The dawn remembers to show up like it always does. Your brother stirs again, lips smacking in his sleep. He shifts so close to the crates, you think for a heartbeat he might cuddle up to a cod like a bedtime doll. You reach out, nudge him back with your boot. He mumbles a protest, then drifts deeper. Good. He'll need his energy to row while you doze on the way. Back fair trade for your watchful eyes now. The boat rocks soft, steady, the same cradle it's been all night. The nets are stacked neatly behind you, patched, coiled, ready for tomorrow's gamble. The crates are full. The aurora sings overhead, and the fjord hums its low lullaby against the planks. Mainstream fact one last time for tonight. Some say Viking fishermen learned more about the sea than any saga ever dared to write down currents, tides. The weight of silence under stars, so sharp they could cut you open with wonder. You believe it. You feel it now in your bones, in your raw fingertips, in the hush that stretches on, deeper than sleep, softer than any hearth's warmth. You let your eyes drift shut for a heartbeat, head resting against the hull. The boat drifts too, always drifting, always humming, always promising you the same thing. Tomorrow, you'll row back under the dawn's first breath, nets full or empty, hands raw or whole, the fjord whispering secrets you'll never quite repeat. Your eyes crack open again as the boat gives a lazy shudder, just a ripple brushing the hull, gentle as a mother's hand smoothing down a child's hair. You breathe in the cold, let it scrape your throat raw enough to remind you you're still here, not drifting off beneath the waves with the fish and the old stories. Your brother's snore stutters and picks back up steady as the waves. You adjust your cloak tighter around your shoulders, fingertips pressed to the rough planks for warmth that isn't there. Somewhere deep below, something bigger than your boat slides through the black, unseen but felt a brush of presence in the vast hush. Mainstream fact. The North Atlantic was not just cod and herring. Whales passed through two massive shadows that dwarfed these little fishing craft. sometimes drifting so close they'd rock your boat with a lazy flick of a barnacled tail. To see one in the faint glow of dawn was an omen some said good luck for the season. Some said a reminder of how small you really were. You peer over the side, half hoping, half dreading. But the water's empty now, save for the slow swirl of your wake and the faint hiss of the tide slipping between rocks you can't see. Fringe tidbit. In old tales, fishermen whispered that a whale's breath could carry secrets if you listened close enough. Stories of drowned ships, lost treasure, or a name you hadn't spoken in years. You grin at the thought. If a whale popped up now, your brother would probably sleep right through it. Historians still argue whether these myths came from truth or from nights just like this one long, slow, cold, with too much time to imagine shapes in the dark. Either way, the sea's big enough for a story or two to swim in its belly. You shift your boots, careful not to rattle the crates stacked heavy with your catch. One more look at your brother, curled like a hibernating bear, arm tucked under his head. He's snoring about seals again, no doubt. You wonder if he'll even remember hauling these fish when the sun finally drags its reluctant cold across the water. Your fingers drift to the patched net, tracing the mended loops like reading old runes. Every knot a word, every knot a promise that next time the sea won't slip through your fingers so easily. The rope smells of salt, fish oil, and your own sweat so familiar, it's like an extension of your arm now. Mainstream fact again. These nets weren't just for the big hauls. Small fry got caught 2 tiny fish, pickled in barrels to keep bellies full through lean winters. Nothing wasted. Even fish bones ground down for meal. Fish heads boiled into thin broths when bigger catches failed. Waste not. Want less. Wanting less means surviving more. Your eyes drift to the horizon, if you can call the vague blur of darkness a horizon at all. The aurora's softened, its green ribbons drifting pale and thin like old silk left out in the rain. You take it as a sign. Dawn's not so far off now. The sky is sighing open somewhere far behind those hills and cliffs that guard your little slice of sea. Fringe tidbit again. Some claimed the line between sea and sky vanished completely when the aurora burned brightest, letting spirits slip through. If that were true, you'd swear you'd seen a few drift by tonight shapes, half glimpsed on the edge of sleep and waking, gone before you could decide if you'd really seen them at all. Historians still argue whether these ghost stories were caution or comfort. Maybe they're both. Maybe when you sit alone in a boat with only a snoring brother and a box of dead fish for company, a ghost or two isn't the worst visitor you could have. You reach into your pouch for a scrap of dried fish tuff, salty, cold as the planks beneath you. You chew it slow, letting the salt bite your tongue awake. Your teeth ache, but the taste keeps your mind from drifting too deep into the hush. The boat rocks again, a low groan in its ribs, like an old man shifting on a creaky bench. The crates settle, the nets breathe out. The fjord hums beneath you, its own heartbeat in the dark. You match yours to it, slow and steady, one breath at a time. Mainstream fact once more. When they returned to shore, some fishermen offered a bit of their catch to the sea before stepping onto dry land, tossing back a few fish as thanks, or maybe insurance for next time. You glance at the smallest cod in your crate, its scales dull in the dying light. Maybe you'll flick it overboard before the first oar stroke home. Maybe the fjord will remember your courtesy when storms roll in. Your brother shifts again, blinking awake for half a heartbeat. Almost dawn? He croaks, voice rusty with sleep and cold. You nod. Close enough. He grunts, scratches his cheek on his sleeve, then flops back down like a sack of herring. Typical. The hush deepens again. The fjord wraps your boat like an old cloak. The aurora's last ribbons drift apart like breath on winter air. You close your eyes, listening for the whale's whisper you'll never hear, the ghost ship you hope never knocks. Just the sea, the dark, the slow promise of dawn unspooling somewhere behind your shoulder. The first hint of dawn is nothing more than a faint paleness at the rim of the fjord, just a bruised smear of gray pushing at the black. You squint at it, trying to convince yourself your eyes aren't playing tricks. After so many hours afloat, it is easy to doubt what is real and what has just another flicker behind your eyelids. Beside you, your brother stirs. He lets out a grunt that sounds like an old door hinge, rubs his face on his sleeve, and sniffs at the cold like a dog testing the air for breakfast. His eyes crack open, bleary and red. "You still awake?" he croaks. You just grunt back, too tired to waste words on the obvious. Mainstream fact. These early hours were when the small coastal villages stirred too. Fires sparked to life in stone hearths, smoke curling up from turf roofs, women unwrapping yesterday's bread to toast it over embers, while the men stomped down to the shore to haul boats back in. The entire world waking up on the backs of cold hands and fish scales. Your brother sits up with the grace of a falling log, pushing a crate with his knee to make room for his boots. He winces when the cold hits him full in the face. "Smells like we did all right," he says, voice muffled by his collar as he peers at the glistening catch. You shrug. Good enough. Never say "good catch" out loud. Bad luck. The fjord hates arrogance almost as much as it hates empty nets. He rubs his palms together and peers over the gunwale at the shore you candy at sea. "Reckon we row now?" he asks. You squint at the pale line of not quite dawn. Maybe. Not quite. Just a bit longer in the hush before your shoulders start to burn again under the oar's bite. Fringe tidbit. Some old fishers believed the last few minutes before dawn were sacred, a thin place where your wishes might slip through the hush unnoticed by the gods, who were busy pulling the sun up by its hair. So you sit there, staring at that bruised gray line, wondering what you'd wish for if you had the nerve. Warmer boots, maybe. A patch of dry land with enough grass to keep you home. Your brother to stop snoring like a dying ox. Historians still argue whether any of these dawn superstitions were more than excuses to sit still for a moment, to breathe in the hush before the day demanded your back and shoulders and knuckles again. You think it's both? You'd stay here forever if the fjord didn't spit you out every time with empty pockets if you tried. Your brother breaks the hush with a low whistle. Look there. He nods at the water off the bow. You follow his gaze and see a faint swirl, a dark ring spinning in the pale water, like something big just rolled beneath. Maybe a seal. Maybe a big cod come late to the party. Or maybe nothing at all, but your eyes weaving shapes out of fatigue. You both watch it anyway, letting the moment linger because it feels like a promise that the sea isn't quite done talking to you yet. Then it's gone, the water flattening back to glass, the swirl sinking down to join all the other secrets the fjord keeps beneath its skin. Mainstream fact again. When the first rays of sun broke over these cold inlets, they didn't bring warmth so much as a kind of permission. Time to row home. Time to gut, salt, hang, mend, eat, mend again. Time to sell what you could and trade what you couldn't. A dawn that didn't mean rest, just the next part of the circle. Your brother shifts beside you, working his shoulders like an old ox getting ready to pull a plow. He spits over the side 3 times. A small ritual for luck that he won't admit is a ritual. You follow suit just once, because you read too tired for 3 spits, and the sea knows your half-hearted blessing is good enough tonight. Fringe tidbit. In some tucked-away coves, old men swore that if your boat bumped driftwood at dawn, it meant you'd lose part of your catch before shore. So you peer into the pale water for any drifting branch. Nothing tonight, but your own shadows stretching thin under the aurora's dying glow. Historians still argue whether these dawn omens were clever ways to keep young lads awake at the oar, or genuine beliefs handed down like net-mending knots. You smile at the thought, testing the oar's grip in your palm. already feeling your shoulders brace for the first hard pull. Your brother shoots you a look. "Well, come on then," he mutters. You nod. One last glance at the crates, at the patched net coiled like a sleeping serpent, at the hush that's held you all night like a mother holds a fretful child. You slip the oar into the cold water. It bites back against the wood, tugging like a stubborn calf refusing the rope. Your brother mirrors you on the other side, his own oar dipping under the gray dawn, cutting a clean path through the hush. Mainstream fact one more time. These rows home were as quiet as the drift out, just the dip and pull, the soft knock of crates shifting, the hiss of water parting around your hull. A fisherman's lullaby in reverse, pulling you back to the world of smoke and bread and voices that dawn tea echo across black water. The fjord sighs under your boat, nudging you shoreward inch by inch. The aurora is a memory now, a faint smudge behind your shoulder as the first true gold of morning starts its slow crawl up the sky. You lean into the oar, muscles waking up angry, joints grinding protest. The boat slides forward anyway. Crates creak, your brother's breath puffs clouds beside yours, and the hush drifts with you, quieter now, promising sleep soon after the gutting, after the mending, after the salt. Always after. The hush gives way to the slow creak of the oars, the fjord's gentle slap against the hull turning, into a steady rhythm that threads itself through your arms and shoulders, like a second heartbeat. Each pull bites at muscles that feel more rope than flesh, now rough and stubborn, built for nights just like this one. Your brother clears his throat, spits once over the side, and mumbles something about his back. You grunt a reply, eyes fixed on the smear of dawn that's growing bolder now lavender, bleeding into a bruised gold that promises warmth but never really delivers. Not yet, anyway. Mainstream fact. Some Viking fishing families believed it was bad luck to speak too much on the row home. Words scattered the luck, they said, like gulls scattering fish guts along the shore. So you keep quiet, letting the dip and pull of the oars speak for you. The soft creak of wet wood and the hiss of the water telling a story older than your tongue. You catch your brother's eye once, just a glance. A silent pact. Keep pulling, keep quiet, nearly there. He shifts his hands on the oar, winces as a blister splits under the raw push of salt and rough grain. He doesn't curse. No one does this close to shore. The fjord might be listening for any excuse to drag you back out. Fringe tidbit. In some coastal villages, it was common to toss a scrap of dried fish or a coin into the water just before the prow nudged land, a payment for safe passage back. You fish a tiny scale out of your collar, flick it overboard. It drifts behind you, spinning silver once before vanishing into the hush. Good enough. Historians still argue whether these small offerings were practical superstition, or just a way to remind yourself you owed the sea something for every catch, every breath that didn't fill your lungs with salt water instead. You reckon both are true. The sea's ledger is never quite paid off. Your oar dips, bites, pulls over and over. The distant dark shore grows teeth now, rocks crusted with frost, the faint outline of turf roofs poking up like lumps under a thick blanket. A smudge of smoke curls from one chimney. Someone's up already, poking a reluctant fire to life, bread warming on a stone hearth that you can almost smell from here. Mainstream fact again. Once on land, the real work starts unloading crates slick with scales, gutting the catch on splintered tables, while the salt wind tries to sneak its chill into your wrists. Fish heads tossed into barrels, skins peeled back with knives sharp enough to slice your sleep right out of your bones. Work to warm you, if not comfort you. Beside you, your brother shifts again, muttering half to you, half to the water. Next time, we use 2 boats. You huff out a breath that might be a laugh. He says that every time. And every time is just you two in the same boat, oars in hand, the hush waiting. The dawn lifts its sleepy head higher now, spilling pale gold that hits the crates at your feet. The fish scales glisten like coin earned, bartered, borrowed from the deep for a promise you'll return something later, maybe tomorrow, maybe next winter. The fjord always keeps its debts marked somewhere in the hush. Fringe tidbit again. Some say if you listen close, you can hear the fish whisper to each other as you row them home tiny gossips carried in the creak of the boat. The sigh of the tide. You lean forward, ear tilted, half mocking the old tale. Nothing tonight. Just your brother's breath, the hush, the promise of a fire you can almost taste. Historians still argue whether the stories the fish told ever made it to the fireside or stayed here, locked between the salt and the oars and the hush. You decide they stay here. Some secrets taste better when they're never spoken aloud. The prow grates at last a soft, gritty bump as it kisses the frost-crusted stones. The oars rest across your knees. Wood damp, arms burning with the last pull. Your brother scrambles up, boots crunching as he hops over the side, water splashing up his shins. He shivers, curses under his breath, then catches himself, one eye flicking to the sea as if it might still drag him back for daring to swear so close to shore. You stand slowly, legs stiff, boots slick with scales and sleep you haven't yet claimed. The hush clings to your shoulders like an old blanket that doesn't want to let go. You step over the side, boots sinking into the pebbles, the cold biting through your soles as you grip the boat's edge for balance. The crates will follow one by one, stacked on your backs, carried up the path to the smoke and the hearth and the waiting knives. The nets too coiled and dripping, mended for now, but hungry for more fish to test the knots you tied by lantern light. Mainstream fact one last time. No matter how heavy the catch, how raw your hands, how bone deep the chill, you'll do it again. Next tide, next moon, next hush that wraps you in its salt-sweet promise of fish and stories, and the lullaby you never really stop humming. You stand there for a moment, breath steaming, brother cursing softly as he drags the first crate ashore. The fjord behind you is calm now, flat as hammered iron. You swear you hear it sigh, a soft goodbye, or maybe a promise to see you again soon. You lift the last crate, shoulder burning, boots crunching up the frost-slick stones. The hush follows you inland, clinging to your hair, your collar, your heartbeat. And when you step inside the warmth, when the door closes behind you, you know the hush will be waiting tomorrow night, patient, cold, deep as the fjord itself. And now, as the hush slips away, replaced by the warmth of fire and the smell of smoke curling through the rafters, your eyes grow heavier than any crate you've carried tonight. The fjord hums on somewhere behind your closed door, patient, gentle, the old lullaby drifting through your bones, like a final whispered promise that you've done enough for now. You ease your shoulders down, rolling out the ache the oars left behind. Fingers flex one last time raw, stiff, but still yours. The warmth seeps back into your knuckles as you listen to the low murmur of voices around the hearth, the faint pop of burning driftwood, the soft clatter of fish scales falling into a bucket. Somewhere, your brother's laugh rumbles low a sound softer than you expected, almost grateful for the catch, the quiet, the drift that held you safe through the hush. Outside, the fjord slips back to its own sleep under the first pale glow of dawn. The aurora has folded itself away behind the clouds, tucked like a secret you might glimpse again on another night, another drift. For now, all that's left is the hush echoing in your mind net mended, crates full, the long pull home behind you like a dream half forgotten. You lie back against rough wool blankets, the last taste of salt on your tongue fading into the promise of sleep. The hush hums softer now, a gentle promise that when you open your eyes again, the sea will still be there, waiting for your oars, your nets, your quiet bargain with the deep. Rest easy now. You've earned it.